This video should hopefully give you an insight into how we support phonics and early reading at Wandle and Shamley Green School. In July 2021, the DFE released a new report called the Reading Framework. This explored many areas of reading, but shared very specific expectations for the teaching of phonics and reading. This caused schools across the country to review their phonics schemes and make changes in line with the new advice. Some of their features of effective phonics practice were direct teaching in frequent, short bursts, consistency of approach across the school, secure, systematic progression in phonics learning, maintaining pace of learning, provided repeated practice, application of phonics using matched decodable books, and early identification of children at risk of falling behind, linked to the provision of effective keep-up support. When it came to choosing a new phonics scheme, we researched many different options, and by January 2022, we started to roll out the new Little Wandle scheme involving phonics and reading in reception and Year 1. So why did we choose Little Wandle? It is based on research and evidence. There is a clear progression and a spiral curriculum reviewing and revisiting content taught regularly. It is matched to Collins' Big Cat books, which are fully decodable until children have demonstrated that they are a fluent reader. There are clear routines for reception in Year 1, which can be adopted throughout the school where applicable. There are keep-up rather than catch-up interventions and resources suitable for Key Stage 2 as well. Importantly, it focuses on having a low cognitive load. This means we keep it simple, focused and repetitive. Less songs and games and simple repeated practice aims for the children to retain the essential knowledge rather than remembering songs and pictures. Flashcards, simple images and avoiding mixing resources from different schemes help this as well. We practice little and often, and this moves their learning from their working memory to their long-term memory. Phonics is making connections between the sounds of our spoken words and the letters that are used to write them down. It sounds complicated, but it really isn't. Phonics is taught daily in reception, Year 1 and Year 2. We have repeated practice with the same structure of lessons, routines and resources in all 3 classes. There's regular assessment to identify gaps in learning, keep up support and opportunities to revisit previous learning. In every phonics lesson, we follow this process. Firstly, reviewing sounds, decodable words and tricky words that we have seen before. Moving on to new content, shared clearly and modelled by the teacher before applying this themselves by either reading or writing. The teacher models something, we then practice it together before the children have a go on their own. In phonics, you may come across words you haven't heard of before that the children will use quite naturally. Some of these are below. A phoneme is the smallest unit of sound that can be identified in words. We sometimes simply call this a sound, but use the term phoneme as well. A grapheme. This is a letter or group of letters used to represent a particular phoneme when writing. With children, we call this a sound written down, although as with phoneme, it's helpful to use the term grapheme right from the beginning. The way graphemes are used to represent phonemes in our written language is known as the alphabetic code. A digraph is where 2 letters come together to make one sound. A trigraph is where 3 letters make one sound. A split digraph represents a vowel sound where 2 letters are split by an intervening consonant, for example in the word take. Despite having consonant in between them, the 2 letters involved, here A and E, still count as one digraph because they make one sound. Blending is a key skill. This is when we combine individual phonemes or sounds into a whole word, working all the way through from left to right. Segmenting is similarly important. It's to identify each of the individual phonemes in a word, working all the way from left to right. This is the important first stage of writing and spelling a word. but needs to be practiced orally first. Counting the phonemes is often helpful in reinforcing this process. In reception, children are exposed to many new phonemes. We learn 4 sounds each week with a review session as well. The children also build up their knowledge of tricky words as the year progresses. The full progression can be found on our school website. Phonemes are taught in the order from the previous slide, and the children start to read words as soon as possible. We have a picture and a word to help remembering each single sound, such as astronaut, and iguana. At the end of the autumn term, reception children are introduced to their first few digraphs. This is where 2 letters make one sound. Most of these are consonant digraphs, such as ch and sh. During phonics lessons, we use sound buttons so that we can sound talk and blend to read. M, a, p would blend together to make the word map. Obviously, there are some words that do not follow our rules and cannot be decoded. These are tricky words or exception words. We review these with the children and discuss which parts can be sounded out and which parts just need to be remembered because they are tricky. In the final part of the phonics lesson, we give children the chance to read and sometimes write sentences. This exposes them to their sound of the day as well as tricky words. Once the children have decoded their words and read the sentence once, we encourage them to reread to work on their expression and fluency. In Year 1, children learn that there are graphemes that can have different sounds, and sounds can be made with different letters. This is when they learn to grow the code. Further on in their learning, children will learn best bet strategies to get used to the most common use of different spellings. For example, for the A phoneme, in the middle of a word, you are more likely to have the AI or A split digraph E grapheme rather than the AY, which is more commonly used at the end of a word. Another example of this more complex code are all of the different ways to write the phoneme sh in shell, chef, special, caption, mansion and passion, all of which children will be exposed to by the end of Year 1. At the end of a phonics lesson, or often later in the day, children will be asked to apply their learning in spelling. First, we say the word, we segment the sounds, we count the sounds, and then we write them down. As with other parts of the phonics lesson, the teacher models, we do it as a class, and then the children apply their learning independently.